So good afternoon and welcome to this day. It's my absolute pleasure to be here and thank you for taking the time to join us on this key event. I know it's very difficult with the cold weather and the snow, so thank you so much for all attending on this difficult weather conditions. My name is Jobbins. I'm the field CTO for Pure Storage in Asia Pacific and Japan, and I always enjoy visiting Seoul. It's one of my favorite cities to visit. The thing is, though, I'm actually based in Australia. So at the moment in Australia, it is 30 degrees. I had forgotten how cold it can be in Korea. So I've been assured perhaps 1 or 2 glasses of soju tonight will warm me up. But it's, as I said, it's a pleasure to be here. I've been in the industry for about 30 years. In fact, over 30 years now. And I've seen a few trends and changes that come through. I think we're on the cusp of a generational change. And I'm going to be talking about that today. I think you'll all guess what it is, but I will dive into that very shortly. So 30 years in the industry and over almost 10 years with Pure Storage. So it's been amazing to see the journey of Pure Storage establish itself and grow, particularly in this market in Korea. So if you're a Pure Storage customer, I wanted to say thank you very much for your support. And I'm going to share with you today, along with the team, the vision as we move forward and why I think this is a very strong position for us all. In my role, I am very lucky to meet with many different organizations, to meet with analysts and customers around different regions and different industries. So today, I would like to share some thoughts on some of the trends and some of the challenges that they are facing. But I'm going to cover 3 things today. I'm going to do a very, very short recap of 2023 and the key trends that occurred there. Let's then dive into 2024 and see what's going to happen in this year. And then what I'd like to do is share how Pure is helping some customers tackle those challenges and accelerate their growth in the business. Okay, so let's kick it off. Let's have a look at what happened in 2023. And there were lots of things that happened from an IT perspective, but I think there were 3 very core trends. 3 things that really shaped the year. And the first one I don't think will be any surprise to you, but generative AI. This is perhaps one of the biggest trends and one of the biggest excitements in IT for many, many years. But I think in 2023, this was a year of exploration. Organizations were trying to understand what generative AI could do, how it could help their business, and really experimenting. So many questions, a very powerful tool, but how do we use it? The second trend that dominated was very much the cyber resilience and cyber protection. We continue to see different threats and the challenge from cyber criminals to interrupt businesses. So the need to focus on protection becomes more important. So this was probably the second big trend that we saw. And then the third one is probably a realization about the impact of IT, in particular on the environment that we live in. So I sort of tagged this a little bit saying it's the rise of environmental consciousness. People starting to recognize the impact. And I think IT has always looked to try and reduce its footprint and try and change and be more efficient. But organizations have had a greater thought and greater focus on this one. Okay, so those are the 3 core trends that I saw in 2023. Now, there were lots of other things, but these were the big ones that shaped the year. So the question is, what will 2024 look like? Is it going to look the same? Well, in some respects, I say yes. But I think there will be slightly different focus and different pressures placed on organizations. And the first one is, if we think about it, during the COVID period and post-COVID, there was a huge, huge investment in IT and the acceleration of many projects to help in digitization and really accelerate those businesses. From what I understand, there will be a greater focus now on getting those returns. People will be looking to maximize those investments and actually start putting a lot of that infrastructure to work to actually provide more benefits. So definitely a demand for return on those investments. I don't think there's any question that generative AI will mature this year. Many organizations are now moving from that experimentation perspective to actually working out how they can use these tools to benefit their business. So this will definitely dominate. And it's certainly a very, very, I'll say a hot topic, to say the least, in the market. But there's a challenge with that. All of the pressure around leveraging generative AI or AI tool sets will put more pressure on the data centers. So if we think about it, NVIDIA is having a fabulous year. They're having a fabulous couple of years, actually, where everybody is investing in the compute layer. But those are becoming more and more powerful computers that demand more power, more cooling, more space in data centers. And as organizations invest in this artificial intelligence wave of technology, it will strain the data centers. So people will need to think more about how we maximize the data centers. And that will drive a focus to sustainability. So I said, I think last year there was an awakening around sustainability. This year, there will be more pressure around this. And then finally, the other big sort of pressure that we see here will be this continual drive to protect data and services from cyber attacks. But also tied into this is also a focus around how do we trust the information that's being provided to AI. So there's this whole sort of cyber resilience piece that's going to be happening as well. So I see these being the key larger trends in the market. Now, there's going to be some technology trends here as well. Certainly, we're seeing the adoption of flash technology to store data. That's the dominant player. There's definitely the move to this, the drive to ensure you've got the best protocols, so using NVMe to ensure the greatest parallelization and performance is important. But these are underlying technologies that support these key trends. So if we have a look at generative AI, we'll just have a little bit of a dive into that one. As I said, will be the year where organizations really look to put this tool set to work. And we're seeing this very much in a supportive type use case at the moment. So how can it help support business processes? And if we look at it, Gartner believes that by 2026, which is only 2 years away, about 80% of enterprises will be leveraging some form of AI, and it will be built into their business processes to accelerate innovation and accelerate the experience and improve the experience. So it's definitely a thing. It's definitely happening. And I think one of the things we talked about in 2023, and there's a lot of communication around it, was those training sets. So people were looking at how do you do the machine learning, how do you do the training sets? And everybody was looking at those training models. Well, I think there's a bit of a rationalization coming here, because initially people were focused very much on perhaps having all their own training data. And I think this will probably change. There's probably going to be sort of 3 sort of models that come out. People will perhaps start just leveraging foundation models. So these are fairly generalized models. So they're not specific to an industry or a particular application or vertical. People might leverage this. You may have domain models. So they might be focused on finance. It might be focused on engineering. And actually have a very specific, tailored model to do the learning on. Or the other one is you may see the rise, and we're seeing a rise of almost service providers to give different models to share on. So there is some thought that this might be the way that organizations tackle the challenge around having large quantities of information, current information, that they can use for training. But I actually think there'll be a bit of a mix of this. Because certainly particular larger organizations probably want to have not only domain models that are focused on their industry, but also leveraging the information and insight they gain on their own customers. So I think there will still be a number of organizations that want to have their own training models. So if we think about AI and that whole training model, last year we sort of focused on the top of this iceberg. And it was all conversations around the training sets, the training models. We have to have very highly specialized, high-performance environments to store this data, to supply it to the different models. In reality, when you talk to organizations that are making progress in this area, this is only literally the tip of the iceberg. It actually comes back to some core basics. You need to have the right data infrastructure sitting underneath to actually provide the data integration to the various different applications, not only from the training, but from the validation side of things, to actually providing that information to your end applications and supporting them. So it actually all comes together. And it's important that we don't end up with silos of infrastructure and silos of data. We need to make sure this is highly integrated, highly automated, and simplified. So I think this is important that we need to think about this and how to actually do the data security and the governance around the information as well. So hold on to that thought, because that's going to be a key theme as we move forward. So let's think about that. So one of the key trends I talked about was generative AI. The second one was around the impact on data centers, and certainly the impact from an environmental perspective. So it's estimated that around 1% to 2% of all power generation worldwide goes to running data centers. So that's a lot at the end of the day. And it's estimated that will actually generate about 2% of the greenhouse gas emissions that are out there as well. So that's up there with airlines. Now, it's different in each country. So some will use more power than others. And in fact, if we look at South Korea is actually one of the highest users of power. So I think it's either, depending which stats you look at, it's either the 7th highest or the 8th highest consumer of electricity worldwide. And on a per capita basis, it's actually number 3. Now, it's skewed a little bit because obviously we have a lot of heavy industry here. But there is a huge push around the data center side of things as well. So as we entered 2023, there was about 147 data centers in South Korea. But there are projections that this will actually increase to almost 340 data centers by 2029, and then start actually using probably around 41 gigawatts of power. That's a huge amount. That's the equivalent of about 30 nuclear reactors. So it's not insignificant. I also noticed that there was an announcement late last year to have a new 1 gigawatt data center campus in the southwest of Korea as well. It'll consist of around 25, 40 megawatt data centers. So there's a huge investment coming into data centers. So it will have an impact. If I then come back to what's actually being used in those data centers, we see that data, so the storage of data, actually represents about 20 to 25% of that power consumption. Now that's going to increase significantly. If you go back to my previous slide about generative AI and people wanting to have these models where they've got more information, they want to generate the information and share it, this is going to put more pressure on it. And in fact, actually, IDC thinks that by 2030, storage could increase tenfold of unstructured data. So that's going to put more pressure on that. So we need to think about that. And we need to try and reduce the impact of IT on the environment. So the first thing is we can look at trying to reduce or maintain the demand for power and cooling within IT. So that's a pretty cool thing to do. The second thing is you can improve the supply. So improve the supply by looking at more renewable energy. Now, this is actually where South Korea is way ahead of many other countries. So there's a big push here to move away from fossil fuels and obviously move across to both nuclear power and renewable energy. And I think by the end of this decade, they're estimating this could be up to around 60% of power generation comes from those two areas. There's not many countries, I'll be honest, that I can go to and actually say that piece. So South Korea is definitely on this journey, but there is still this huge demand. And then the final way that people can try and mitigate, or I guess address the issue of greenhouse gas emissions, is try and mitigate the impact of that. So that means perhaps planting some trees, some, buying carbon offsets, carbon sinks, those kind of things. All three things are very important. But I believe that actually reducing and maintaining, controlling the original demand for power and cooling is important. This can actually control the initial footprint. And this is very much where Pure has been focused on. So if we look at IT and machine learning, Pure Storage has been involved at scale from machine learning ever since 2016. And we've recognized and we've seen the rapid increase and demands for more storage to power the AI generation toolsets and the machine learning toolsets. The way that Pure Storage has tackled this over the last decade is to simply make our products more efficient and more dense. So in the last decade, we've increased from an initial 5 terabyte product through to a product today which is 1,200 times more dense from a storage capacity, still using the same power, the same cooling, and the same footprint within the data centers. This is actually the Meta research supercluster, one of the largest superclusters in the world. Uses Pure Storage. In the first phase, they actually had 250 petabytes of storage attached. This is subsequently increased to over 500 petabytes of storage attached to it. Now, Meta selected Pure Storage because we had the lowest power requirements, so this meant they didn't have to expand their data center. We had the highest density of storage, so they could use less racks. It used less cooling. And probably most importantly for Meta, given the scale that this is at, the level of reliability meant less components failed, so they had to go into the data centers less frequently. So this was really important for them. And in fact, here's a couple of quotes that come from Meta around it. But this is ultimately why they selected Pure: the reliability, the lower power and cooling, and the density. So we've understood it for quite a long time. So that's covering off generative AI and the environmental side of things. Let's have a look at the next one, though. The cybersecurity. Now, I've been a bit cheeky here, but we can think of the cyber criminals as the new bank robbers. The difference being they don't need to go into a physical bank to get the money. They will come into your systems, and they will know exactly how much your data is worth, how much your systems are worth from a financial perspective and from a reputational perspective as well. So, as I mentioned, I've been in the IT industry for over 30 years. At the beginning of my career, I spent a lot of time actually in the backup area. And my experience was you would set off a backup and you would pray that it finished in the time frame. But the most important thing is you hoped you never needed to recover. That world has changed. And today, it is now a case of when you will be attacked, not a case of if. So organizations need to be prepared. So this is making a change. And this is why we see that we need to have built-in intelligence into all layers within your infrastructure. And cyber storage needs to be aware of the challenges and potential threats. Within IT and data centers, it's always been a case of protection at depth or security at depth. From physical security to network to application. But we've now moved to the point where you need to make sure that your data is protected and that you can recover very fast. That's the difference. It will happen, and you have to be prepared to recover. There are many examples where organizations have not tackled that and are simply not in business. So, this has always been a focus, and this is an area that Pure helps our customers with as well, and we do it on a number of fronts. We ensure, as a last line of defense, the data is encrypted at rest. That's by default. There's no performance hit for that. We allow you to take immutable snapshots of the data. So you can take copies of the data anytime you want. Nobody can change that data. And then we've also added another level of protection to help, where we've called this safe mode. Because we see the risk, whilst traditionally was external, the risk quite often today is actually an internal threat. And it could be a rogue administrator. So we now provide the service where those snapshots cannot be deleted by somebody internally. Now, this has actually saved a number of our customers that have had this service turned on. There's no additional cost. And they've been able to then recover a clean set of data. So this is an important thing, and this needs to be embedded and make sure that it's just there. You don't want to have to tune it. You don't have to turn it on. You won't have to look at it and do that. It just needs to happen because you don't have time to think about this in the panic mode. So we then actually wrap around even more some intelligence from a platform called Pure One. It does AI intelligence across your environment. It will proactively tell you what data is protected, what data is exposed. But if there is a change in your environment, it will do analysis and actually proactively tell you something's changed. So these are just the norms that should be there. So I've covered off a few areas there. I've talked about one of the big trends being that generative AI and how that's going to take off. I've talked about the impact to the data center and how we need to think about reducing the footprint within a data center. And then also just how we actually make sure and how you need to be focused on securing that data. Now, we've been doing this for a number of years. And there's a few of us here that have been working with Pure for 10 years. And it's been amazing to see the growth for this. Each year, we take more market share, we have more customers, we have happier customers. And we're now seen very much as one of the industry leaders. And I think this is down to three core pillars. It's three core foundations that we have. So the first one is around innovation. So we invest around 20% of our revenue back into R&D. But this drives a staggering pace of innovation. But one of the core things here is our innovation is delivered non-disruptively. So you'll hear today from the other presenters about the ability that once you're on Pure Storage, you don't need to migrate anywhere else. You don't need to change. You will have new features, new functionality, new performance, all delivered non-disruptively. That is unique in the market, and it is across all of our platforms. So that's pretty cool. Now, you would expect me to say this, but in fact, actually, Gartner, for 9 years in a row, has said we're in the top right-hand corner, the thought leader, and the most ability to execute. So 9 years in a row, Gartner has actually said we're on track. The second pillar is around quality. So our engineering team has a huge focus on the quality of our product, and that's driven around simplicity. We want to make the product simple and easy to use, and the focus goes into driving that innovation, but also ensuring the quality is there. And the test point for that, I would actually go around, is our customer satisfaction. So customer satisfaction, we measure it independently using a Net Promoter Score. It's 81.4, unheard of in the industry. So our customers love what we're doing. And then the final pillar is all around efficiency. So we drive to get the best efficiency out of the technology. So we have the highest reliability, the highest density, the lowest power, AI automation built in, and management, and all of this done non-disruptively. So these three pillars have allowed us to succeed and continue to grow and take more market share and have happier customers. But ultimately, where this is leading us to is our vision and our overall strategy has been to provide a platform for our customers to run their applications seamlessly and easily and automated anywhere, and to be able to do that securely and with confidence around the product. So my presenters that will be on after me will also be talking about how this all comes together, and there is a single platform that organizations can run their applications and maintain their data. And this is very much the focus for us. So with that, I'm going to wrap up and say thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Hopefully that's shared with you some ideas as to where the trends are going to, the focus areas that I think will be happening this year, which is around the emergence and usage of generative AI, the impact on the data center, how we need to be more focused on the environment, and how we secure that data. Now, I've set the scene, but I'm actually going to hand over to my colleague, Pratush, who's actually going to come up on stage, and he will be sharing with you in greater depth the vision of Pure Storage and how we're helping our customers. So thanks again. 감사합니다.